All right, James, all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So thanks for joining the session today. I think everyone on the call probably knows me, but yeah, my name is James Sanders. I'm the CEO of Scoot Education, and I'm super excited for this webinar today and hope it's just the start of how IBM and Scoot can work together to expose as many educators as possible to Teacher Advisor. The first time I saw Teacher Advisor, I was super invigorated by what IBM has created at the intersection of their Watson artificial intelligence technology and, learning content and teaching content from, some of the best providers out there. It's really a great example of using cutting-edge technology to improve learning outcomes for students. And at absolutely no cost, what really could be better? It's a great resource. So I hope you'll get a ton of value out of this session and then also from using Teacher Advisor in your schools and classrooms. And just very quickly before I hand it over, I just want to thank Cliff and Hari for running the session tonight. They're two of the people behind Teacher Advisor at IBM, and I think they've created something really special here, and it's just the start of a really powerful tool in the education landscape. So thank you for running the session tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining the session tonight. Over to Cliff and Hari.
James, thank you for a great intro. That was we should really hire you to be a spokesperson, and I promise to all the folks listening to this or participating, we did not put James up to that, but we appreciate that introduction, and I just want to echo James and say thanks to everybody who's taking the time, whether you're coming from Australia and it's the middle of your day, or whether you're a teacher in the United States and it's the very end of your day and into the evening. We appreciate you taking the time, and we certainly hope the next 45 minutes or so provide you with a good overview of a free resource, as James said, that you can use in your classroom or to use to prepare before going into a classroom. So I'm going to get into some talking points just to guide the conversation. Should you have any questions, you can always feel free to put them in the chat. My colleague Hari will be standing by to monitor those, but you can also feel free to take yourself off mute and ask a question in real time. We can keep this flowing and actually be an interactive discussion. So just to start, I'll pull up this deck. Teacher Advisor is, as James was saying, a fully free tool. It is a philanthropic initiative from the IBM Foundation. So Hari and I both work for IBM Citizenship. We are the philanthropic arm of the IBM company. And we started this work on Teacher Advisor over 3 years ago when the Watson technology was really taking off for the IBM company, and we wanted to do something philanthropic that was actually going to be different in education. And we convened a group of stakeholders in education, so the president of the American Federation for Teachers, which is the largest teachers union here in the United States. We had commissioners of education across the country. We had curriculum providers, people that really have a good pulse on the teaching profession and are part of the teaching profession themselves, and really just ask them how you would want to see artificial intelligence leveraged to enhance the expertise of a teacher in the classroom and really lead to quality student outcomes. And the response was that, there's a lot of tools that are built, a lot of cutting edge technology that really goes directly into the hands of students. There's a lot of tools that we as teachers and educators get all the time just kind of thrown at us, and it's hard to understand what's quality, what's really going to lead to better student outcomes, and we're particularly in need of these things in math. So, on council, by all of our partners that we have been talking to, by teachers themselves, we decided to build a tool that would be free, that would basically curate the best instructional content out there, totally free of charge, and rely on our Watson artificial intelligence engine to surface up the right insights from that content, given what a teacher might be looking for in the moment, get rid of some of the issues that teachers were having around, searching on Google, searching on Pinterest, searching on all these other sites that have just too much content and not a whole lot of vetting associated with it. so that teachers could walk away more quickly, more efficiently, and really be able to have confidence that what they're going to use is going to actually lead to better outcomes in K-8 math. So as mentioned, and I should just say that this is always going to be philanthropic. It's always something that we try to collaborate with the teaching profession on. We're constantly doing teacher workshops across the United States. We're looking to expand internationally by moving to India and actually building a custom tool for India teachers there. But if you're a teacher from Australia, from Canada, wherever you may be, the tool is fully free to use. Although it is aligned to the U.S. standards. Those are internationally benchmarked standards. So we hope that there will be content that's relevant to you on there. So as mentioned, this is really a tool that's designed to help teachers plan. I know that probably has resonance to the folks in Scoot and who work with Scoot because, you might be, in certain cases, thrown into, a school on a short-term notice, and you really need to get up to speed on what it is that you're going to teach. Or if you're a full-time teacher, those are by far the vast majority of our users. You're constantly in need of new resources or resources that are going to help you supplement your ongoing curriculum more thoughtfully and eventually differentiate for the needs of your students. And that is something we hear constantly from teachers is a huge need. We want to be able to enable you to do that work more thoughtfully and more efficiently and more effectively. So this is always going to be free. We've already done the work to filter out the noise that we see on a lot of other instructional sites. You're only going to encounter high-quality vetted content in this tool. At the moment, again, I do want to be clear, we are supporting kindergarten through 8th grade math, which I know was clear in all the marketing, but sometimes we do get teachers who are elementary school and they teach multiple subject areas and they really want us to get to ELA, get to science. That is certainly possible down the road, but right now we are dealing with kindergarten through 8th grade math content. And I should say that was by design initially because, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Math scores in the United States are, to say the least, not what we would want them to be as a country. And particularly when we're dealing with kind of relatively new standards in the United States, there's a real focus and impetus to build conceptual understanding in early grades math so that students are college and career ready down the road and actually have the skills and knowledge that they need in order to be successful in long-term careers, particularly with a focus on STEM. So that's why we started in math, and we certainly hope to build that out over the next couple years. The Watson element of this, we won't get too in the weeds because it's less relevant to you, the teacher, or you, the administrator, but the important pieces to know is that we've ingested all of the high-quality content into our Watson engine. It analyzes it using natural language processing, and it's able to return a ranked order of results based on relevance to your search. And it's able to understand some of the nuance of elementary math that you wouldn't get if you were dealing with a typical search engine. So some of the examples I'll use are, Watson's actually been trained by some of our education partners to understand what a hands-on activity in math looks like, or what it actually means to find a resource that builds conceptual understanding or uses tactile activities and manipulatives. So those are things that teachers we know from survey data, from anecdotal discussions, or you're constantly looking for those things. You'll be able to find those in a much more targeted fashion in Teacher Advisor because of that training. We are trying to help you, the educator, not only just pull a resource and be on your way. We know that there's plenty of sites that you can do that on. We want to help you actually be thoughtful about how you differentiate and how you understand where student knowledge might be breaking down so that you can address those needs more effectively. That's where the differentiation or remediation guidance comes in. And the last thing we always like to say as we're introducing this to teachers is this is a totally supportive tool. It's not going to be mandated by districts or by states that you have to use it. And we're not really collecting any data aside from your email address and your location. So you don't have to worry about this being used in an evaluative sense. There's not student data components here. It's really just designed to give you a resource that you can trust and use when your students really need more thoughtful planning. So what content will you find in Teacher Advisor? Again, this is K-8 Math. We have almost 2,000 lesson plans across those grades, over 5,000 student-facing activities, 500 instructional tasks, As you'll see from the demo, those are a bit more involved, but aligned to 21st century standards. And then we have instructional videos and pedagogical documents. So all those serve a bit of a different purpose that we'll get into in the demo. And then these are some of the sources. The important thing to take away here is that these are really the best of breed providers in the open education space. And these are folks that really pride themselves on independent evaluations of their content for alignment, for rigor, for coherence. And so you can trust that what you're finding in the tool is truly going to be high quality and it's going to be aligned. How are teachers currently using Teacher Advisor? So there's not really there's not a one-size-fits-all approach here. There's a number of different use cases. The most prevalent ones are the ones you see on the screen here. So the majority of our teacher users are folks that have district curriculum and really just need an additional lesson plan or additional student-facing activities to supplement that district curriculum. So a case might be that, you're a third grade teacher, you're teaching a unit on equivalent fractions, and you know from prior experience that the 4 weeks that your district has said you have to teach that subject really isn't enough. But your curriculum only covers 4 weeks of instruction, so how are you going to ensure that your students are actually mastering equivalent fractions? By adding in really quality lesson plans and student-facing activities on top of what you're already using. Teacher Advisor is a go-to site for that use case. It's also a case where if you are a substitute teacher or you're on a temporary assignment and you really just need a clear sense of, before you get that curriculum or that lesson plan that you're subbing in for, what it is that you're going to be teaching, you can come to Teacher Advisor, you can understand what the standard is calling for, and you can see some sample lesson plans that you might consider using when you're teaching or to at least get you caught up on what that concept is asking students to master. We do have teachers that use this on a much more regular basis because either they have freedom of choice on what curriculum and content they choose to use and therefore want to come to Teacher Advisor because it's clearly laid out, it's got a sequence associated with it, you can just kind of follow it lesson by lesson, or because they're from an under-resourced area, their district has not paid for district curriculum, and rather than spending time creating their own lesson plans, they want to just go to something that is really high quality, and you can find that here. The 3 and 4 here are pretty linked. The fact that teachers do come here for remediation and reteaching. So if if I have a group of students that are just really struggling on a particular concept, they're not mastering it, I don't know why, but I have data that indicates they're really not doing well on a certain concept, I can come to Teacher Advisor, pull up that concept, find a remedial resource, and have high confidence that it's actually going to meet those needs of my students, rather than focusing on the grade level content, napping back a couple grades to ensure that those gaps in student knowledge are filled. Targeted student practice goes along with that, but we see teachers who just need extra activities before assessments for the end of the year to really help their students, get that additional practice aligned to high quality content. You can find that in Teacher Advisor. And then lastly, one that I think might be of use to the folks affiliated with Scoot, we have standards overviews for every concept in K-8 mathematics. And we have a lot of cases where teachers who are relatively new to the classroom or who might be switching grade levels for the first time and are not quite as familiar with the grade-by-grade sequence of what they're expected to teach, use Teacher Advisor to get a feel for, if I need to teach fractions, what does that really mean? What knowledge are my students going to need to have coming in to that particular unit or that lesson that I'm teaching? What are some resources that I can use? What are some video examples of that lesson or that concept in action? All of that is available for you in Teacher Advisor. Said I wouldn't go too in depth with this. This is just a visual to indicate how we use the Watson piece to this. Watson takes in all the content. It actually, instead of a typical keyword search, which you'll find on other sites, it's going in depth into the body of the lesson to pull out the key concepts that are prevalent in that lesson. So, I used the example before of fractions. If I'm dealing with, a volume lesson in 5th grade, it's not just going to pull out a bunch of keywords associated with that. It's actually going to say, things like project-based learning or, conceptual understanding in dealing with geometric shapes those are some of the things that we'll pull out. And then our subject matter experts, who are a body of former teachers, kind of coach Watson to understand where it's not hitting the mark, or where, it needs to focus more clearly, so that when you come to Teacher Advisor and you do a search, you get really high-quality results because they've been vetted, they've been curated, and they've been analyzed by our Watson AI engine. Anybody is free to register at teacheradvisor.org, and we certainly encourage everybody who's attending or who's going to listen to this on playback to do so. It's teacheradvisor.org. You can click the login button, the sign-up button at the top right, or you can click Start Using Teacher Advisor at any point, and you'll have a free account ready to go. It'll send email to you, and you won't have any issues, being able to sign in at that point. So I'm going to show a demo now. And again, if you do have any questions, feel free to throw those into the chat. We can address those before we break. But once you do create an account here, you will be able to log in. And, it goes without saying it's a free tool, but there are, there's really no strings attached. We're not asking you for credit card or anything. It's really just going to send a link to your email address. If you are using a district email, I will just flag that some of the spam filters can be really strict with those. And we do see cases at certain points in time where those will actually, the confirmation code will go to your spam folder. So just keep an eye on that if you do register and you're not getting the email for whatever reason. But in the vast majority of cases, you shouldn't have a problem. So once you do log in, you will come to this page. And there's really two ways to get to content. You can search or you can browse. And before you see this page, it's going to ask you a couple questions just to personalize the content recommendations for you. It'll ask you your grade level. It'll ask if you're interested in content that meets the needs of students with learning and attention issues, English language learners, things of that nature. And then, in my case, I have indicated that I'm a third grade teacher, but you can always filter between grade levels. And so if you happen to be a substitute teacher or a teacher on temporary assignment and you might be switching grade levels week to week, month to month, year to year, this might be a useful tool, just the fact that you can quickly toggle between grades. And then when you dive in, you can do the same thing on every page. Pointing out again, we briefly went over this, but just to underscore the point, there's really 4 different types of content that you'll encounter in Teacher Advisor. There's information about standards. So what do your students need to know grade by grade? Lesson plans, what's a full lesson that I can put in front of my students aligned to a particular concept? Student-facing activities, what are some quick activities that I can put in front of my students to get them to practice and build their understanding in a particular concept? And then strategies and resources. So these will be more professional development variety. So it'll explain kind of the shifts in standards from grade to grade. So where is knowledge going from kindergarten to first grade, first into second, so on and so forth. And it'll also have video examples. These are all going to be teacher-facing videos. So, they're for you, the educator, to really get a solid grounding in whatever it is that you're going to teach that next week, that next day, depending on your particular needs. When you've used the site, you can pick up where you left off by coming down to the recently viewed. And then anytime you either save content or download content, it'll appear in your library, which I'll show in a minute as well. So a couple examples that I hope are useful to the folks that are attending. Again, we'll take an example of the third grade teacher. And if you get notice that, you've been identified for a substitute teaching assignment, or, you as an administrator really have a lot of teachers that are calling out, you need some substitutes to come in. This is an example of how you might use Teacher Advisor to help ensure that you're up to speed or that your teachers are up to speed. So we'll take a case of, somebody who's early on in the year. They're coming in and they know they need to teach midway through a unit on multiplication and division within 100. They got a third grade assignment. They click on standard. They see, okay, this is the operations and algebraic thinking domain. I see multiply and divide within 100. So I'm going to click on that. I see that it's a major standard, so it's really important work. I could see the standards that are leading up to that particular unit on relationship between multiplication and division. And then I can actually click on this particular standard. In this case, it's 3 OAC 7, multiply and divide within 100. When I'm on this page, I'll see the text of the standards, fluently multiply and divide within 100, using strategies such as the relationship between multiplication and division or properties of operations. I realize it's a mouthful, but it does break it down by showing you some examples. And then you'll see several pieces of information that are useful before you go in and actually look at a lesson. So you'll see prerequisites. These are really the pieces of knowledge that the teacher or you yourself will teach before you get to this particular standard. So before you get to fluently multiplying and dividing within 100, you're going to need to deal with strategies that really show single-digit multiplication, so commutative property, associative property, distributive property, thinking about division more conceptually. So in this case is an unknown factor problem. You can click on these and learn more about them if you want. But again, the important thing is to understand what students need to retain before getting into this particular standard, and then seeing some examples of that. So if you click on the tasks button here, you'll have a task from a resource provider called Illustrative Math that is really an example of what students will need to be able to do in order to master this particular standard. So this is a really good way for you as a teacher who is trying to get your head around exactly what you might be teaching to see, okay, in this case, if a student is really going to be considered to have mastered this standard on fluently multiplying and dividing within 100, they're going to need to be able to solve this pretty elaborate word problem. But thankfully, there are clear instructions. I could use this activity if I wanted to in the class. And then there's some teacher-facing commentary for me as well to really understand the skills that students are practicing, types of facilitation tactics that I should consider using, and then the solution, which is obviously very important. After I've done that, I can jump to the Teaching Strategies tab. I can see some of these longer documents that are at the unit level that are going to tell me about multiplication and division using units of 6 and 7. So if that's something that I know I need to teach, that might be a really useful document for me to check out. I could just look at it and preview it, or I could download it. If I download it, it's going to export as a PDF, and it'll also save to my library. Or I can continue scrolling here and see what else I have. I see that there's some videos that are aligned to this particular standard that might give me a good sense of what this lesson actually looks like, or this standard looks like in action. This is going to be an example of an actual class, 43 minutes long. It's going to be a sample lesson. If I have the time, I can certainly watch this whole thing, but I could also just click this drop down on clips. And if my computer stops freezing, there will be shorter versions of that particular longer video as well that are available to me. So this is just a way to, orient you to the content that you're going to be teaching. Again, these are teacher-facing videos. There are, you can see here it finally unfroze. There's some clips that really get specific about this particular part of this in-class lesson plan that I'm going to be seeing in action. These studio talks are really effective for me, the teacher. They're not going to be observations of a class in action, but there'll be a content coach that's really telling me certain strategies that I can use. So those always get really high reviews from our teachers. And again, give you a broader view of what it is that you're going to be teaching as you go into the classroom. Once you've done that, that's not the end of the game. We know you need an actual takeaway resource that you can implement. Otherwise, all this newfound knowledge probably isn't that useful. But at that point, you can click on Show Me Lessons. You're going to see some lessons that will have the title on them, so you know exactly what they're dealing with. You'll see in certain cases this flag where it'll say contains support for English language learners. So if you're familiar with the Engage New York content, you know that it's really high quality, but oftentimes it contains references that are really helpful that are hard to find. So we've actually taken those references, we've made them more front and center so that you can see, okay, if I'm viewing this, there's some tips on how to support English language learners on page 5, and I can go directly to that page, see this particular reference to English language learners here before I get into the exit ticket for that day. Ensure that I'm keeping this tip in mind when I'm going over some of the academic vocabulary. So you can click on any of these lessons and decide to use them. Will typically be, depending on your grade level, several provider options, but I will caution you that we are trying to do something differently on Teacher Advisor than you would find on other resource sites. You're not going to find a ton of different content providers, and that's by design. We don't want to overwhelm you with too many options, and we also don't want to throw content that has not been properly vetted at you. So the primary, anything you find, it has already been vetted, so you can trust that. But Engage New York is going to be the primary resource you'll see in K-5 because it is the only high-quality, vetted, independently evaluated full grade curriculum, so kindergarten through 5th grade. And then at the middle school level, we have Engage New York and Open Up Resources. Those are the two that have been independently evaluated by EdReports and by Achieve for quality. And so if you're questioning kind of why am I seeing the same stuff over and over again, that is by design. We try to provide a limited amount of choice so that you don't have to stick with just one, but you can trust that, you know, the pieces that you're seeing from Engage really are quality, they're aligned, and they're rigorous. So that's kind of one example of going through standards to get to a takeaway content and really help ground yourself in what it is that you're going to be teaching. I should say, too, that you can also click on activities if you just need some backup things that you want to have at the ready when you're going into the classroom. These are some good fluency practices. They're very quick. They're time-stamped as well, so you can see how long they would take. You know, in this case, there's some 8-minute ones, there's some 2-minute ones, so you can always feel free to pull those in as well. The other way that you can get to content, and this might be relevant, again, in a case where you know you're going to be stepping into a classroom kind of midway through a unit and you really need something specific that is going to get you up to speed or something specific that you're going to use with your students. So I'll shift to a 7th grade problem here. In 7th grade, one of the more prevalent use cases is, or prevalent units is on linear equations and moving from, you know, 1-step equations in 6th grade into 2-step equations in 7th grade. So I could type in something like writing linear equations into the search, if I could type. And again, this is natural language search, so you know you can search a variety of different things. The more specific you are, the better the results actually will be, which is different than the experience that you typically get on a site. But again, that's because of the Watson AI piece. So I've typed in writing linear equations, and you can see that we've structured the results similarly to what you would find on the browse mode, standards, lessons, activities, and strategies. So I can click on standards here. See this standard from 7th grade on apply properties of operations as strategies to add, subtract, factor, and expand. Just like before, I could click on this, see the prerequisites. I see that, you know, if I'm about to go teach linear expressions, my students better remember the distributive property in 6th grade. I could also, you know, just look at the lesson plans and see that, okay, there's some Engage New York. There's some from Open Up Resources here. I'm just going to pull one of the top resources. I'm not going to use the one that Watson's recommending to me, even though it's probably going to be good, but I'm going to pull this one because it has English language learner supports, and that's something that I care about. Within 2 clicks, you can view the lesson in its entirety. You can see kind of the learning goals for this particular lesson, some comments about what students will be doing in this particular lesson. I'll have supports built in here, so there's going to be flags about supporting students with disabilities here as well. It'll have the standards alignment, some task statements, and more. If this looks really good to me, I can download it. And for this particular content provider, you're going to get a suite of downloaded options. So it'll download as a zip file. You'll have a full lesson plan. You'll have a shorter lesson plan version. You'll have a teacher presentation and task problems, and then some actual handouts that you can use with your students. And then, you can also check other lessons that are similar to this one. So if you don't want this content provider, but you want another lesson plan that still hits on the same concept, this is where you go. If you want help with, remediation, this is going to be where you go. We have every single resource in the tool will have prerequisites, and we've identified the most relevant lesson plans to lead into the current one that you're looking at. And what I mean by that is if I know that, this looks like a pretty good lesson for 50% of my students, but I still have 20, 30% that are really going to struggle on this, and I need to make sure that I am pulling in additional resources that are aligned to the prerequisites so that, I'm not overwhelming them with something they're not ready for because they just don't have that prior knowledge necessary. And, maybe I'm a teacher support specialist, or I'm in a co-taught setting, or I have an intervention block. I could look at this remediation guidance tab, see, okay, I'm actually going to deal with this prerequisite on converting rational numbers first, or I'm going to go all the way back to 6th grade and pull in, this particular lesson on using decimals from 6th grade because I just feel like they really need to go back and understand ratios or understand decimals, whatever the standards mapping is really telling you, wherever you think that deficiency, that knowledge breakdown is occurring. This will give you actionable resources that you can use to address those gaps in knowledge for your students. You're always going to have strategies here as well. So, you can see here that this is a video. It's an example of an in-class video tagged to the same concept that lesson is dealing with. So you can watch that, get a better feel for how you might implement this particular lesson plan. And then when you've downloaded something, you can always visit My Library. And TeacherAdvisor is going to automatically categorize this to a point. So if you've saved it, if you've downloaded it, if it's a lesson, an activity, a strategy, depending on grade level, again, if you're a teacher who often teaches different grade levels, this might be really useful, the fact that you can organize it automatically by grade level. But then we're going to give you the ability to create your own folders. So I've already created a folder here on linear expressions. And this is already, there's already one lesson that's in there. If I want to just see all the content, the negative rates, I could easily add it into that folder that I've created. And then it allows me to ensure that, if I am teaching a particular full unit, I could throw all the lesson plans into that unit. If I'm coming in on a sub-assignment, I can just have things in my back pocket that I can pull and reference at a later date. So it just makes it easier to store your particular resources here. You can always mess with your profile too. If you want to include, for example, resources aligned to these particular needs. If you're a K-5 teacher, I just want to direct you to some unique content that you can't find anywhere else other than TeacherAdvisor. So if you click strategies, again, this is where you'll find a mix of different type of resources. But if you're dealing with students who have diagnosed learning needs, you can filter by National Center for Learning Disabilities, and you'll see these documents that are useful for all students, but are evidence-based practices that have been proven to be effective for students who have a learning and attention issue. And so these are kind of strategies that will explain to you what to do, why it will help address a particular learning and attention issue, and then give you the handouts associated with this. So this is another example of, if you just want more of you don't want a full lesson, but you want something that you feel confident is going to meet the needs of your students and that you can easily implement, you can pull up these strategies from the National Center for Learning Disabilities. The key is included, and it's aligned to standards as well as to particular concepts. So you can always use those as well. You'll see teacher reviews in a lot of places. You can always leave reviews after you have downloaded a particular resource. You can also just leave feedback more generally about the site. We're always eager to hear from teachers of all situations in all contexts. So don't be shy about that. And then, as I was mentioning before, if you just want to browse and you're teaching multiple subject areas or multiple content grade levels, you can always just filter. Even if you want to search, say something like place value, which is a fundamental concept in elementary math, not just in one grade level. You can search the concept. You'll see results aligned to fourth grade here, but if I want to go back to third grade, because I'm going to be teaching 2 different grade levels, but keep all the content of your search stagnant and then just filter by that particular grade level with new results. So it's just a quick way that you can navigate the site and get to content that matters to you. So that's the overview of Teacher Advisor. Are there any questions that folks want to ask at the moment? And if not, I can, get to some additional information and just some tips for best practices.
I'm keen to hear some tips, Cliff.
Okay. Just as a more background in terms of, who's using the site, what teachers are saying about it, I haven't updated the site, but we're actually over 12,000 teachers. I failed to mention this at the beginning, but we weren't a fully available tool until September of 2017. So we've been at this, we've been in development for over 3 years, but we haven't actually had teacher users for only in the last 16 months. So we have over 12,000 teachers coming most prominently from the states that you see here, but we do have over 1,000 teachers who are using the tool outside of the U.S. as well. India is the most prominent place, but Canada and Australia are second and third. And, the feedback that we get, anybody who tells you that their tool is getting 100% positive stuff is lying to you, no matter who they are or what they're talking about. But I will tell you that the feedback has been very, very positive from our teacher users. And there's really, several themes. The first, the fact that it's easy to use. You can navigate very easily between concepts. You can see prerequisite standards. You can get a good mix of a variety of different content, not just lesson plans or not just standards information. It's responding to the needs of teachers. So we've come a long way since we first launched in September of 2017. We've added middle school content because we knew middle school teachers really wanted this. We've added those supports for students who are English language learners and for students who have learning and attention issues. And so we're constantly listening to teachers and trying to respond to that feedback. And then the last, the content's really quality. That's less of a comment about Teacher Advisor itself and more a comment about our partners that have helped us vet this content and who really are experts in the field. And they're always going to be guiding us to ensure that we're maintaining quality and ensuring that the resources you find on Teacher Advisor are really going to meet the needs of your students. So when it comes to where we're headed and just some kind of tips for best practices, do want to give people a heads up that we are always making improvements to the site. In February, we're going to be giving teachers the ability to modify lessons. So add your own notes to it, pull in Khan Academy videos, add in some remedial tasks right into a lesson, get rid of stuff if you don't want it, if it doesn't meet your particular needs, and then add in challenge problems. So we're really excited about that release. It's something that teachers have asked for a long time now, and that'll be live to you, the teacher, at the end of February. Mentioned the Khan Academy content. We're also going to be adding more middle school activities and information about the math practices standards. So keep an eye out for that. And then, as you head out tonight or into the afternoon, if you're coming from another geography, just some basic next steps that we recommend. Obviously, sign up for a free account at teacheradvisor.org. Very simple to do so. Whenever you know what you're teaching next, if you're a full-time teacher and you have an upcoming unit on adding and subtracting fractions if you're in fourth grade, or multiplying fractions if you're in fifth grade, take a look at the search. Type in some specific search terms. These are just two examples. So, two-digit addition in second grade, even getting more tangible in 7th grade, real-world problems with rational numbers. Like, you can get very specific with the search terms, see what results are coming up, browse from those lesson plans, look at the standards navigation to really get a feel for what students are being asked to do on that particular concept. The videos are a really good resource for just grounding you in some strategies that you might use and seeing that high-quality instruction in action. And so, take a look at the standard first, the video second, and then I recommend looking at the resources after you have that grounding, just as the lesson plans have a little bit more context before you download them and use them in your class. And of course, Hari and I are pretty much a two-man team here. If you ever have any issues, you can email tahelp@us.ibm.com. We're monitoring that all the time, and we're happy to help either share additional resources for using Teacher Advisor, or just dealing with technical problems, welcoming any feedback, positive or negative, any of the above. We're standing by. So certainly encourage you to reach out at your convenience.
Yeah, and just Hari, just one thing I wanted to add, Cliff, Dante had a really good question. He was asking about a specific type of resource, and Dante was asking about if we had any lessons in Teacher Advisor that teach conversion between imperial and metric units. As we know, the U.S. has a different system of measurement. And now, at first, I responded to Dante saying that I wasn't sure if we have that, but I did a little digging, and it looks like what you would want to do is when you sign up, go into 4th grade and look for the Engage New York resources. And there's a resource called A Story of Units. I don't know which domain it is, but if you look in 4th grade, Engage New York is the resource provider, and you should be able to find a good number of resources that address this idea of converting units between the two systems. So I apologize for that. There are actually some good resources there. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, and I'm actually, to your point, Hari, thank you for teeing that up. If you just type in metric conversions in 4th grade, you will see a number of results here, kind of what you're referencing. Express metric length measurements in terms of smaller units. There will be conversions too in different, this is measurement conversion tables. So there's a whole unit from Engage New York devoted to this. And then if you look at the standards here for MDA, one is actually dealing with measurement in the metric system as well as in the US-based system. So there's a wealth of resources available to you here for that as well.
And last thing, Dante, I know we call what you were referring to, we can say it as imperial units, but the way that Engage New York calls them, it's called customary units. So just look up something like customary to metric unit conversion. You should find something.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, Dante. Appreciate it.
I think I might watch that content. I need help with customary units.
Yeah, we could all use some instruction.
Yeah, and it's funny, our international English-speaking audience, that's the first thing they gravitate towards is, conversions between measurement units. And initially, that was not a focus of the U.S.-based system, but since we shifted to a national standards system, it actually does deal in the early grades on, multiple international measurement systems. So there is content to support that, thankfully.
Okay, great.
So, want to obviously be respectful of people's time. If there are any additional questions, Hari and I can stay on to field them. Otherwise, encourage you to just sign up for an account, reach out if you have any feedback or questions. If you are an engaged social media user, we are at IBM Education on Twitter, and would always love a follow. You can check out some additional content that we have through that feed. But wish you all the best between now and the holiday season and just the rest of the school year. Whether you are a full-time teacher, an administrator, a substitute, the work you're doing is incredibly important. And we just hope that this tool makes it a little bit easier to find really quality content that's going to meet the needs of your students.
Thank you, Cliff.
James,
thank you, Hari.
anything
Thank you for everyone who joined.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, folks.
Good night.
Thanks, James.
Have a good one, folks.